Benvenuti e benvenute ad un nuovo episodio di Actually, il podcast che parla del cambiamento che sembra arrivare piano piano e poi travolgerci tutto d'un tratto. Oggi vi porto nel mio format perché è quello un po' più escludente, mi sento di dire, rispetto al mio co-host Ricky Bassetto, che è CEO Insights, ovvero il format in cui provo a mettere in relazione il profilo psicologico umano dei grandi e delle grandi manager in giro per il mondo e il lavoro che fanno da CEO. Provo a capire cosa diavolo voglia dire davvero fare il leader di un'azienda. Oggi sono davvero felice perché ritorniamo a parlare un'altra lingua, ci mettiamo a parlare in inglese, purtroppo è sempre quello poi, perché abbiamo una CEO straordinaria, tra l'altro di un'azienda che noi con Will abbiamo sempre guardato con grandissimo interesse. Questa azienda è Too Good To Go e lei è Mette Lykke. Welcome to the show, Mette.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for having me.
I'm sorry you probably didn't get all the nice things I said about you in my introduction. We're extremely happy to have you here on the show. I just mentioned that we here at Will, both Will and Cora, are big fans of what you guys do at Too Good To Go. Could you please just share with us in a couple of sentences what the meaning of Too Good To Go is and what you guys actually do?
Of course. So Too Good To Go is about helping reduce food waste. So we allow consumers to save the food that your local bakery or supermarket or sushi place would otherwise throw away. So you basically find your favorite store on the app, you reserve the bag, and then you go and you pick up the food, typically by the time they close up for the day.
And how long have you been working there?
So Too Good To Go is a little more than 9 years old. I've been CEO for the past 8 years now, and before joining us, I initially came on as an investor and started sparring with the founding team.
You were an investor, but before and earlier in your life, you worked in a very different industry, right?
Yeah, before joining Too Good To Go, I co-founded an app called Endomondo. It was one of the first running apps and apps, really. We started that company in 2007. It was initially built for Nokia phones. This was before the App Store, so people didn't really know yet what an app was. But we had this vision of making fitness fun. And so we thought, if we turn your mobile phone with GPS into a personal trainer in the pocket, then we could, help use tech for good.
And you did an exit there. So you sold the company at some point.
Yes, the company was acquired by Under Armour late 2014.
Okay. And how was, for you personally, this shift from being a founder and manager of a company to a situation, so the one that you're living now and at Too Good To Go, where you just manage something that actually isn't yours, and at the same time is so purpose-driven like Too Good To Go is?
So I think the way I think about it is, when you start a company, it's a little bit like a baby that you have. And for me, when I joined Too Good To Go, I adopted a baby. I mean, I didn't conceive it as such, but I have the exact same love and passion and affection that I did my first time around.
So you don't think that, last year at some point, so it was 2024, there was this huge debate, wave, hype, or flame, let's say, on both on social medias and on newspapers about this phrase, this way of describing the way people work in leadership position within an organization, was this founders mode. I don't know if you at some point heard about this debate. Brian Chesky was part of it, by the way. And so he was like, yeah, you need to be founders mode on, and he was somehow underlining the great difference that there is between a company that is led by a founder or by someone who is in founders mode, so someone who is extremely, let's say, also a bit paranoid and extremely, his life is bound very, very, very intimately to what he does. How do you interpret that debate? What do you think about it?
when I think about how I entered and got involved in Too Good To Go, I initially came across the concept when I was on a bus, and the woman next to me on the bus, she showed me the app on her phone. And at that time, the app had been out for 9 months. So, I hadn't heard about it yet. Very few people had, obviously, after 9 months. And I just thought it was the coolest thing, and I immediately fell in love with the idea. I thought the execution of it could be better, but I loved the idea. And then I got in touch with the founders and were like, "Hey, congrats on this fantastic idea. How can I help?" And then they said they were looking for sparring from someone who had app experience, which I had 10 years of, and they were also looking for funding. They hadn't raised anything yet, so a few weeks later, I invested. But the fact that I joined after 9 months, and I think at that time there were 8 or 10 people on payroll beyond the founders, I think for me, I feel like I've almost been there from the start. And so I think also anyone who's been around here will say that I act as much as a founder as any founder should and could. So I don't really think about it differently. I don't want the founder title because I wasn't here on day one. But I think for all practical purposes, I'm capable of going into the founder mode when that's needed.
I can pretty much relate on what you say because my story is pretty similar. I joined well like 6 months after the company was founded, and then I decided to invest in it. I guess the part of the investment and like the equity participation to the business, and then can depend how big it is, but like also just like symbolically, it really changed a lot to me. And I'm always very open, and actually I always try to push to open. Sometimes can be symbolic, sometimes not symbolic, but a share of the equity part of the business to the management. How do you see this? Like, so the entire stock option debate, do you think it is something nowadays, let's say a conditio sine qua non, so like an accessory condition to have proper managers, or you can just say, no, guys, you're paid, you have your salary, and that's it. And then maybe I can push you on the mission statement part of the company, and so forth, so on.
Yeah, I think if you want to attract the best talent, you have to be competitive. And so we got a B Corp certification back in 2019 for the first time, and as part of that certification, we read about employee share equity programs and that kind of incentives, and we kind of got inspired by that to create a program for employees where several times now along the years, employees have had the opportunity to kind of get in and buy some equity. So at a discount. So we've done that a few times now, and I think we have about 700 employees now who've taken advantage of that. I think it is helpful to have something like that installed.
I think you just touched a couple of points. Well, actually, an important thing is the numbers. You just mentioned 700 employees. You reached also incredible numbers in terms of revenues. You're like around €500 million in terms of revenues. Correct me if I'm wrong, for sure, because I can know the numbers of this year. But you also touched a very, very, very important point of the discussion I want to have with you. It's one of the B Corp certification, and let's say the entire industry-related movement of this certification. What do I mean with that? We assisted at some point, I'd say, between 2015 and 2023 at least, this big wave of, let's say, the sustainability wave, and also especially the sustainability wave connected to companies and big corporations. And there was, on the one hand, this wave was sustained by a big communication effort. So everyone wanted to communicate about the sustainability topics, wanted to actually also take a stance on those topics. And then at some point they wanted to have certifications. Let's start with this certification point. What do you think about certifications when the discussion is about ethical elements? Because sometimes like the certification is about how ethical you are. I'll try to do my personal challenge to this, let's say, debate, and let's say how hard it is to certificate and, let's say, put in a in a quantitative scale something that is so highly and intrinsically qualitative. And so I'd say I wouldn't go for dinner with a friend and judge him on how ethical he is based on the certificate that he has. What would you say about it?
So, but just on B Corp, I don't think any certification is perfect. It's trying to put on something on a formula that maybe is hard in nature to put on a formula. But I think for us, it has been a helpful framework for how to think about our business from several perspectives. So B Corp operates with these 5 different lenses around governance and customers and employees and environment and so on. And I think for us, it has been helpful in terms of just covering our basis from all those different perspectives. I would also say when we first started going after that certification, I had a full day meeting with my management team where, we sat down and, we had the B Corp questions. We had read through them as prep for the day. But then the whole day was just, what is the kind of company we want to build here? And we can be inspired by some of the B Corp stuff, but that should not dictate what kind of company we're building. And so for each of those 5 dimensions, we kind of went through what are some principles or, some ambitions we have around these topics. And we started with that. And then we put in place a couple of initiatives where we thought this is super important. We want to do better. We want to raise the bar. But I think important for me is that it doesn't become a checklist exercise. B Corp says this, then you go do that. Yes, now you got half a point. That's not how I would like to use those frameworks. I'm sure that happens somewhere, but for me, it has to start with what's your own vision for the company and who you want to be, and then let's see if that qualifies for certification.
From your privileged perspective, how would you rate the state of art of, let's say, the relationship between sustainability and capitalism? So, as mentioned, we have had that wave where everyone wanted and needed, apparently, to be sustainable. There were financial requirements, there were regulatory requirements, but there were especially, I'd say, the big push came like in terms of reputational requirements. So, let's say, if you weren't taking part to either a, let's say, green sort of activism and or a rainbow sort of activism, just mentioning a couple of colors, let's say, that then also degenerated to the washing issue. So the greenwashing, the pink washing, and the rainbow washing, and so forth, so on. So we had that moment, we had that explosion. I always, even when the greenwashing issue became so mainstream, I still thought that it was a very positive thing. I still thought that even those the degeneration were actually extremely positive because they were a sign of something that was moving. Then the word apparently and very quickly changed, at least the wave, the hype changed. And now it looks like, from my perspective, that everyone is kind of stepping back. We see it also as a communication company here in Italy and as a media. How would you express yourself about this dynamic overall?
Overall, I think one of the strengths of Too Good To Go's concept is that we do well by doing good. So we never have to really balance between profitability and purpose. Every time we make anything in revenue, it's because we saved some food from going to waste. It's because we did something good. So we really try in general to make sure that the purpose and the commercial interests are completely aligned. So I can give an example. We measure success in how many meals have we saved from the bin. I think most companies would measure success more in terms of revenue, but we're very strict that for us, meals saved is the main KPI. it still makes sense commercially, and finance is still happy enough because it's directly correlated with our revenue. We get a fee for every meal that we help save, right? But it does make sure that it is the mission and why we're here that stays front and center. And then when we do initiatives, we try to make sure, even when we do things outside of our core business models, we, maybe we'll get into that, but we think about impact at three different levels. That doesn't mean that we just, stop thinking about what's in the interest commercially. We try to make sure we then invest in things that can deliver both on the mission, but also helps the business longer term.
And I want to keep you here. What about the more the general overview of the industry? Because you guys, for sure, participate to so many forums and symposiums around the globe. How would you say that, let's say, the wave is doing and the industry is doing in terms of sustainability? Do you think we are on a proper correction of something that at some point became probably too much? Or, I mean, you're optimistic, you're pessimistic about the way corporations will be relating themselves with sustainability-related matters?
Yeah, so I think overall, I mean, there's no doubt that we are not treating our planet super well. And we are not, I mean, it's not like we are course correcting fast enough. We definitely still need to do more, and I think a lot of consumers and a lot of businesses are aligned with that. Where things maybe went off rails a little bit was when all of these reporting requirements just starting to look like we would have so many people just sitting there reporting things, which I find to be a risk, because those were people who could have actually implemented initiatives that would move something, and instead if we have them doing admin and reporting things all day long, those resources haven't actually had any real benefit for the planet. So I'm hoping now with the EU kind of pulling back on these CSRD requirements, I'm hoping that companies will use the resources on implementing real stuff that will actually drive impact, and then we can maybe take a little bit of a break from reporting on, honestly, a lot of data points also that aren't necessarily relevant for all the companies that would have to do it.
What about your feeling of the market in terms of the consumers? So the business and let's say the product that you guys sell is on the one hand matched with an interest of the consumers to probably buy a cheaper meal, because it can be extremely cheap sometimes to go, at least in my experience, compared to what you'd pay from a normal bakery or a normal restaurant, and so on. On the other hand side, there is also, I mean, always, at least I always had this feeling when I used your service. There is also a purpose push, okay? So you're matching my interest in acting in a purposeful manner. And so it's okay, well, that waste, I want to do something, and so I'll use Too Good To Go because I hate to have food waste. This second element, do you think that in this sort of vibe and cultural shift that we're living, did you guys feel that something changed and that that purpose is somehow weakened by this vibe shift?
Overall, we find that Too Good To Go's users are attracted by three things, I would say. So the first is saving the food from going to waste. That that feeling you have of you actually did something good. You actually took a step in the right direction. It feels different than ordering a pizza on a normal food delivery app. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is this surprise aspect, because you don't know exactly what you're going to get. There's an element of fun and surprise and seeing what's actually in the bag today. And then the third thing is then more around the affordability. And especially, we've seen pretty significant inflation over the past few years now, and food prices are still at a very high level. And for a lot of people, Too Good To Go then also becomes a way of getting affordable good food on the table. So I would say those three reasons for using Too Good To Go, we see continuing being at the core, and I don't think we've seen any big shift amongst them. It's still the cocktail and the combination of the three that's powerful.
And what about, let's say, the trend in terms of I don't know what's the proper way to describe them. So how do you define, so the restaurants, the bakeries, they are the resellers. How do you call them?
We call them stores.
The stores. Okay, it's pretty easy. Actually, your relationship with the stores. Do you think and do you reckon that among the last years, those guys are becoming more and more aware of their impact in terms of food waste? So from my perspective, actually, in a perfect world, you guys would be out of job. So meaning that like they produce the right amount of stuff every day. Is actually this attention growing in their way of driving their businesses?
I think in general, there has been if I look at it over the past 8 years now, there's definitely been an increasing focus on food waste as a thing we need to actively work to reduce, definitely. And of course, from a mission and an environmental perspective, best thing would be to prevent it altogether to begin with. But I think the reality is, if you imagine running a bakery, if people come in an hour before closing, you maybe don't want them to only have 3 different options to choose from. We at least find that, if you really want to get to zero food waste, then it's going to come at a pretty high price revenue-wise, because you will be giving up on a lot of sales if you operate like that. So that's a choice you can make, right? I haven't met a lot of independent business owners who are willing to make that call. So they have to just find a balance between the revenue and the food waste, and so Too Good To Go comes in handy as an alternative to the bin now that we end up having all this surplus food. I will say we often find that when we start working with a new store, they start out having a certain level of surplus food, and then we often see that after a few weeks it gets reduced a bit because they suddenly become more aware of it. Now, there's just a different kind of attention on it. So some of that could be prevented, but then after that, it's relatively stable normally.
So I'd like to move a bit closer to you as a person, as an individual, and about the way you on the way you actually treat yourself in regard to your relationship with your work. So let's start from the very beginning. Can you just tell me how your day-to-day routine starts? I'm a big fan of mornings. So what time do you wake up? What is the very first thing you do every day you wake up?
I wake up 6:25.
6:25, not 6:30, not no. 6. How come? Why 6:25?
6:25. I don't know. I think at some point I had 6:30, and I just found that the mornings got a little too rushed. So now we put it 5 minutes earlier.
I love this because also like my wake ups on my iPhone, they look crazy. Like they have no sense. Like it's something psychological. You say, okay, no, let's do 6:43, which is not 6:40, is not 6:45. No, I see your point. So it's 6:25. And what do you do when you wake up?
Yeah, I mean, first thing I do normally is to see how much food we saved yesterday.
Is it? Okay, so work. The first thing you think about is work.
Just one dashboard. I don't go into all my Slacks and emails, but just one dashboard just to see.
Okay, so you open a phone or you open a laptop?
Phone, my phone. Yeah.
Okay, your phone. Are you still in bed when you do it, or you're out of the bed? This is an important question.
Yeah, I have to admit I'm still in bed when I do it.
You're still in bed. Okay, no, because there are two different ways of interpreting this thing here, this phone thing. So you're still in bed. So you scroll just a second on the work thing. Then are you able to limit yourself to that, or
no, that's it, because then I mean we have a pretty stringent thing going in the morning, because then I need to wake up the kids, and we have breakfast as a family, and the kids need to get to school and things. So that whole thing needs to run a little bit like clockwork.
There's no news time in this moment. Okay, no. You don't listen to radio and or podcast, maybe even while you have breakfast.
No. We just try and get through the morning. Yeah.
Okay. How many kids do you have?
Two.
Okay. Yeah. So at what time do they go to school?
Yeah, so they usually go to school, say 7:30, 7:40-ish.
Okay. They go alone, they have a bus or something?
Yeah, that varies a little bit, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And then I, after I bike to work here in Copenhagen.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Pretty much a cliche. A Danish manager using his bike or her bike to go to work. Do you listen to something? You listen to podcasts when you bike or something? Podcast, radio, whatever.
Yeah,
cool, maybe.
Yeah, I would often listen to a podcast, especially in the morning. In the afternoon, when I bike home, I would often have like one or two phone calls I just didn't get to during the day.
So podcasts in the morning. What sort of podcast? Is it a news podcast? Is it a...
No, it's more about scale-ups.
Business.
I have a couple of favorites, yeah.
What are your favorites?
So one is, what's his name?
Masters of Scale.
No, that's a good one too. No, the growth guy. Lenny's podcast.
Lenny's?
Yeah.
A good one. Check it.
It's really good. He has like some of the biggest scale up and tech stars on there. Right now, it's a lot of AI, I would say. But
it's a US podcast, an American podcast.
An American one, yeah.
Okay, that's pretty big. Yeah, cool.
And then the other one is the 20VC.
20VC, Harry Stabbings.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're pretty much, let's say, work focused in terms of podcasting.
Yeah, sometimes I'll listen to a novel as well, but
to a novelist.
Yeah, a novel, like a
novel,
proper, fiction thing.
Yep. So you arrive at work around 8. What time is it? No, it's 9.
No, I'm at work at 8 o'clock. Yeah.
8 o'clock. 8 o'clock. At the office.
Yes.
Is it going to be just you at the office at 8 o'clock, or is it like the typical let's say too good to go and or Danish moment? Everyone is at the office at 8.
I am among the first here, so usually we would be a handful or two here on my floor at least, and then more people come in between 8 and 9.
First thing you do?
It depends. If I have a meeting at 8, I'm straight on, and otherwise I'll spend a bit more time on performance, checking a few dashboards, just catching up on Slack and email. I often have half an hour before my meetings start at 8:30. So, and then I get some coffee too. Yeah.
Do you have an idea of how many emails do you receive on average each day?
No, I don't know actually. Probably 50 or something.
50 or something, okay. And how many meetings, per day? Do you have any rules on that? Because there are people who have strict rules. I mean, I interviewed people who have very strict rules about the number of meetings they can do and how long those meetings must be.
Yeah. No, I don't think I have strict rules. I mean, many days are almost back to back, 8:30 to 5.
Okay.
I do have, if I have some, I mean, it's different now. So in the early days, I was very hands-on and I did a lot of stuff myself. So back then, I didn't have a ton of meetings. I didn't have enough people to meet with either. So I would have a lot of work time. But now, we're 1,300 people. I have a super fantastic team, and they're the ones implementing things and running with things. So I spend more time just meeting one-to-one with quite a few people and aligning on priorities and what are blockers and how can I help. And so I don't project manage much at this point. And if I have something where I'm the main driver, then I'll schedule time for that in the calendar, because otherwise there won't be time.
That's interesting here. Going back to that founders mode debate of last year, I'm on your side because I think that the proper manager and CEO, at least from my style, is someone that is, let's say, managing people who manage stuff and isn't really hands-on on project That debate was actually the Brian Chesky debate and the Graham debate was like, yeah, this is how managers do. But founders will always be hands-on, will always be on product development. And so me, Brian, the Elons of the world, they still like work as somehow also product officers. Do you feel that you're missing something when you're too far from the product? Because I have those moments when I say, I'd love to be there and do it. And how do you behave in those situations?
Yeah, so I think it has been a transition, and there was a time, early on where I thought like, what do I actually do here if I'm not really producing anything myself? But I do think that part of leadership is actually important, and I have to think I'm adding value since I'm still around. So I'm okay with that. This doesn't mean I won't have opinions about things, and sometimes I can have quite detailed opinions about the product, for example, or something they're working on in terms of a new feature, or some new marketing campaign or things. I might have detailed opinions on that, but that doesn't mean that I'm gonna get my hands dirty and now I'm the one to fix it. I mean, that would be micromanaging. So, I let someone else work on it.
Yeah, we're not Mr. or Mrs. Fix It. This is also something that I try to.
I think it's also just realizing that by now we have so many good and specialized people that in any specialty now, I'm not the best one.
The better position. I go with the last question for you that I always ask to anyone who comes here at the show. So one helpful advice of something that as a CEO, I really need to do and something that I really should avoid to do in any case for my future here. I do and don't.
You mean in terms of actual tasks?
Everything, like something that I should avoid as a CEO is something that I really should do and prioritize as a CEO.
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of talk about work-life balance also for founders and for CEOs, and I think more about it as managing your energy. I think that concept makes more sense to me than when are you at work and when are you not. So one kind of maybe kind of framework I have is when I look at my to-do list, I ask myself, am I the only one who can do this? And if the answer to that is no, then typically I shouldn't do it, unless there's one other question, which is, am I going to enjoy this? And will this give me energy? And if the answer to that is then yes, then, maybe depending on how time consuming it is, I might do it. But otherwise, really have to delegate as much as possible, because there are just a lot of things by now that only I can do. Like, talking to you on this podcast, I probably couldn't delegate that 3 levels down, right? So there are just these things that I have to do, and thankfully I also enjoy a lot of those. But then there are other things that maybe I don't have to do, but that I do because I also need to manage my energy, and I actually really enjoy it, and takes me back a little bit more maybe to the founder times.
Super useful as let's say a positive advice, and something that I should avoid, like really literally something that I shouldn't do as a CEO or stop doing maybe.
What should you stop doing? I mean, micromanagement is something I did a bit of 18 years ago. I think I've gotten very much out of that habit, but it didn't serve me or anyone else well. So I would advise to stop doing that if
don't micromanage.
Habit.
Yeah, it is very important. I guess the two elements, like say the positive and the negative advice that you gave me, are extremely connected, for sure. And thank you so much for this advice and for your time, for joining us on the show. And I hope that you guys at Too Good To Go will manage to fight this food waste thing, which is still huge. Also, speaking as an Italian, I say it pretty loudly. And good luck to you guys and to us all.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure to be on, and 40% of all food goes to waste, so we have a lot to do. But thank you.
Thank you so much. Ciao a tutti e a tutte, ci sentiamo alla prossima puntata di Actually.